Nobody expected this, not even Parker Schnabel himself. What began as a routine cut through frozen ground quickly turned into something far more significant, something that could reshape gold rush history. Deep beneath layers of stubborn permafrost and overlooked pay dirt, Parker and his crew picked up a signal. At first it was faint, easy to dismiss, but within hours, that subtle hint grew into one of the richest gold concentrations ever seen on the show. This wasn't just a good run, or even a record-breaking haul. It was a massive $300 million gold zone, an extraordinary discovery that could make this the most profitable season in mining history. The operation kicked into overdrive. Equipment was pushed to its limits, crews worked around the clock, and the pressure reached a level Parker had never experienced before. Because now, it wasn't just about finding gold. It was about getting it out before harsh conditions, weather, or risk took it all away. This wasn't just another season. This was a turning point. To understand why this discovery matters so much, you have to look at Parker's journey. Many people know the highlights: the teenager who took over his grandfather's mine at just 16, the young miner who outperformed seasoned veterans, and the one who transformed Big Nugget Mine before stepping away to build his own empire. But there's more beneath the surface. Parker grew up surrounded by mining. His grandfather, John Schnabel, was a highly respected figure in Alaska's mining world, a man who spent his life understanding the land and the gold within it. While most kids were playing games, Parker was learning how gold settles, how ground shifts, and how to read a pay streak. By the time he took over Big Nugget Mine, he wasn't just a kid trying to lead. He was already a miner who happened to be young. Still, running an inherited operation is very different from building one from scratch. When Parker stepped out on his own, he took a huge risk, one that tested him in ways he hadn't fully anticipated. The early years were tough. He made costly mistakes, pushed equipment too hard, and expanded into areas that didn't deliver. There were conflicts with crew members and hard lessons about the difference between skill and smart business decisions. But what truly defines Parker isn't just talent. It's his determination to learn. Every setback became a lesson. Every failure helped him improve. Over time, he refined his approach, becoming not just good, but exceptional. Before this discovery, he had already built one of the most efficient operations in the Klondike. It wasn't flashy, but it was disciplined, strategic, and consistently profitable. He hired specialists, embraced new technology, and worked smarter than most. By the time this season began, Parker wasn't chasing gold anymore. He was tracking it with precision. So when that unusual signal appeared, he didn't ignore it. Where others might have moved on, Parker stopped everything. "We're not moving until we understand this," he told his crew. That decision changed everything. It all started on what seemed like an ordinary day. The crew was working through a standard section of ground, an area considered moderately promising, but not a top priority. The excavator moved steadily, the wash plant ran smoothly, and the team communicated as usual. Then Tyler, the lead excavator operator, noticed something subtle. The resistance in the bucket had changed, not dramatically, but just enough to feel different. Experienced operators sensed these shifts instinctively. He radioed Parker. "Something feels off down here. You might want to take a look." Parker could have brushed it off or sent someone else. Instead, he headed straight to the site. At first glance, nothing looked unusual. The ground appeared the same, frozen, dark, filled with rock and silt. But Parker crouched down, picked up a handful of material, and examined it closely. He noticed what Tyler had felt. The density was different. The color had shifted slightly. And when he broke apart a chunk of frozen dirt, he saw faint traces, tiny, almost invisible to most, but clear to him. He didn't hesitate. "Shut down the cut," Parker said. Tyler was surprised. "Are you sure? We're only halfway through." Parker didn't waver. "Shut it down. We're testing this entire area before moving another inch." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Shutting down a cut in the middle of work wasn't something you did lightly. It cost time, money, and momentum. You certainly didn't do it based on a gut feeling or a handful of dirt. But this was Parker Schnabel. And when Parker made a call like that, there was always a reason. Within an hour, testing was underway. Parker's geologist, someone he had hired just 2 seasons earlier at considerable expense, began scanning the entire area using ground-penetrating radar. At the same time, sampling crews started pulling core samples in a precise grid pattern across a half-mile radius. The first results came back 6 hours later. They were promising, noticeably richer than the surrounding ground, but not yet shocking. The second round arrived early the next morning. Parker had been up before sunrise waiting for them. He studied the numbers carefully. Then he read them again and again. Finally, he called his geologist into the trailer and shut the door. "Tell me I'm reading this right," Parker said. The geologist leaned in, double-checked the coordinates, ran calculations, and stayed silent for a long moment. "You're reading it right," he said at last. "Parker, I think you're sitting on top of a major ancient tertiary channel, and if the gold concentration stays consistent across the mapped area..." He paused, doing the math in his head. "This could be the richest single discovery in Klondike mining history." Parker leaned back in his chair. Outside, the crew went about their usual morning routines, unaware that everything had just changed. He took a deep breath, picked up his phone, and made 3 calls. One to his equipment supplier, one to his logistics contractor, and the last to his father, Parker Schnabel. "Dad," he said, "I need to tell you something. But first, sit down." The discovery was real. There was no doubt about that. The real question now was what to do next. The following morning, Parker called an emergency meeting with his senior team. He laid everything out: maps, test results, core samples, and projected recovery estimates. When he finished, the room fell silent. "So, what are we looking at in total?" his operations manager finally asked. Parker glanced at his geologist, who answered carefully. "Conservatively, assuming the concentration holds across about 60% of the zone, we're looking at somewhere between 150,000 and 180,000 ounces of recoverable gold." Someone quickly did the math out loud. At current prices, that meant roughly $300 to $360 million. The silence that followed was heavier. "That can't be right," one crew member said. "The data says it is," the geologist replied calmly. Parker let the weight of those numbers settle before speaking. "Here's the problem," he said. "We don't have the equipment or manpower to mine this at the scale it deserves. And we've got a limited window, maybe 10 weeks, before conditions make it too difficult." He held up one finger. "Option 1. We stick with what we've got. Play it safe. Lower risk, but we leave a lot of gold in the ground." Then a second finger. "Option 2. We go all in. Bring in more equipment, hire more crew, run non-stop, and try to pull out as much gold as possible before the season ends." "What's the risk with that?" someone asked. "Everything," Parker said plainly. "More equipment means more breakdowns. More crew means more complexity. Running 24/7 increases fatigue and mistakes. And if the gold doesn't hold across the area, we've overcommitted big time." "And if it does?" another voice asked. Parker looked down at the projections. "Then we rewrite the record books." The room sat with that for a moment. "What are you going to do?" his foreman asked. Parker had already been wrestling with that question since early morning. He had gone over every scenario, tested every risk, and run the numbers again and again. He always came back to the same conclusion. "I'm going all in," he said. "But we do it smart. We don't just throw resources at it and hope. We build a solid plan, one that scales up production without sacrificing the efficiency we've spent years building." He paused, then added firmly, "We're not going to let this discovery make us careless." His operations manager nodded. "When do we start?" "We already have," Parker replied. "I ordered 3 more excavators and additional wash plant components this morning. They'll arrive in 5 days. Until then, we prepare, restructure the site and the crew to handle what's coming. He looked around the room at the team that had built this operation with him. This is the moment we've been working toward. Let's not waste it. What followed was the toughest stretch the crew had ever faced. Over the next 30 days, the workload pushed everyone to their limits. The new equipment arrived on schedule, but integrating it into an already active operation proved far more complicated than expected. The site had originally been designed for mid-scale production. Everything from access roads to power systems and water management was built around that scale. Expanding meant upgrading nearly every part of the operation without stopping production. Crews worked overlapping 12-hour shifts. Operators who once handled a single excavator now coordinated multiple machines at once. Wash plant technicians who had managed one processing line suddenly had to oversee several, each handling different types of material. And the gold deposit itself wasn't uniform. The ancient channel revealed hot zones, areas packed with high concentrations of gold, and cold zones where gold was present but much thinner. It wasn't a straight path to riches. It was a complex, unpredictable system that demanded constant adjustment and precision. Mining this ground efficiently wasn't just about digging. It required a deep understanding of how the deposit behaved. The goal was to focus on the richest zones without completely ignoring the rest. Every evening, Parker Schnabel sat down with his geologist to review the day's production data and adjust the plan for the next day, deciding where to concentrate efforts, where to move equipment, and which areas to process more quickly. One night, as Parker rearranged the plan yet again, his operations manager watched and said, "You're running this like a chess game." Without looking up, Parker replied, "Chess players think 10 moves ahead. We need to think 15. The pressure was enormous. With a larger crew, leased equipment, and rising fuel costs, the operation was burning through more than $200,000 every week. If gold recovery didn't keep up, things could go downhill fast. For the first couple of weeks, it was a close call. Production increased, but expenses were rising even faster. Parker monitored efficiency like a pilot watching fuel levels, knowing that even a small imbalance could cause big problems. Then, in the third week, everything changed. The crew hit their first major hot zone, and the results were incredible. In a single 12-hour shift, they recovered nearly 400 ounces of gold, more than Parker's previous best entire week. The sluice boxes filled so quickly that the crew ran out of containers and had to improvise using whatever they could find. Late that night, Parker stood by the wash plant, watching the cleanup. For the first time that season, he allowed himself to feel something close to certainty. "We've got it," he said quietly. Beside him, Tyler nodded as he watched the gold pile up. "Yeah, I think we do." The news spread quietly through the crew. No one celebrated yet. They knew better than to get ahead of themselves. But the energy shifted. People worked faster, sharper. The exhaustion of the past month started to feel more like purpose. That night, Parker called his father, Roger Schnabel. "The numbers are real, Dad. This is real." There was a pause on the other end before his father replied, "Your grandfather, John Schnabel, would be proud." Parker didn't say anything, but later, one of his crew members noticed him standing alone at the edge of the cut, looking down into the ancient channel that had held its gold for thousands of years. It was a quiet moment, one that seemed to connect everything he had worked for with the legacy he came from. By mid-August, the results were impossible to ignore. Even the skeptics had to accept what was happening. Weekly gold totals that would have been considered extraordinary for an entire season were now routine. The crew was processing 3 times more material than in previous peak seasons, and the deposit continued to deliver consistently, something even the geologist found remarkable. "In 20 years of placer mining, I've never seen anything like this," the geologist told Parker. "Not at this scale, and not this consistently." By now, Parker had stopped being amazed by the numbers. His focus shifted completely to execution, keeping operations efficient, controlled, and disciplined. He had seen what happened when success made miners careless, overspending, overexpanding, and ultimately failing. He wasn't going to let that happen here. So he introduced a strict daily routine. Every morning before work began, the senior team gathered for a quick review, going over the previous day's performance, checking equipment, and setting clear priorities. No surprises, no chaos, just steady, disciplined execution. The equipment held up better than expected, thanks to the strong maintenance culture Parker had built over the years. Machines pushed to their limits kept running because they had been cared for properly from the start. The crew held up too. Running 24/7 wasn't easy, but Parker made sure shifts were structured in a way that allowed real rest. He knew how dangerous fatigue could be: mistakes, accidents, and costly breakdowns, and he wasn't going to let exhaustion undo everything they had built. As September approached, the Klondike began showing signs of seasonal change: colder mornings, early frost, and ground that would soon start freezing again. Parker sat down with his accountant and reviewed the season totals. The numbers were staggering. Total gold recovered: 47,300 ounces. Estimated value: $298 million. Net profit after expenses: around $180 million. Parker stared at the figures in silence. His accountant waited, knowing moments like this didn't need words. Finally, Parker looked up. "Is this accurate? You've checked everything?" "3 times, the accountant replied. "This is the most profitable single season on record for this operation, possibly in the history of Klondike placer mining." Parker nodded slowly, and then, in classic Parker fashion, he did something unexpected. Instead of celebrating, he picked up the cost report and started analyzing it. "What's this fuel spike in week 4? He asked. His accountant blinked in disbelief. "Parker, you just made $180 million. Parker didn't flinch. "And we still had inefficiencies. I want to know why, so we don't repeat them next season." The accountant looked at Parker Schnabel for a moment, then smiled and shook his head. "All right, I'll pull the logistics data," he said. Some things never change. No matter how much success Parker achieves, he's always looking for ways to improve. This $300 million season isn't just the most profitable in Gold Rush history. It's a perfect example of what happens when preparation meets opportunity, and neither is wasted. The discovery itself happened because Parker built a culture where attention to detail truly mattered. When Tyler noticed that slight change in the resistance of his excavator bucket, he didn't ignore it. Most operators probably would have kept going, but Tyler didn't. That's because Parker created an environment where small signals are taken seriously, where instincts are trusted, and where anyone on the crew can speak up if something feels off. And the reason this discovery turned into a record-breaking success is just as important. Parker didn't let it make him careless. In many other situations, a find this big would lead to rushed decisions, throwing resources at the ground without a plan, pushing too hard, and eventually running into equipment failures, exhausted crews, and financial trouble. The kind of story that starts strong, but falls apart before reaching its full potential. Parker understood those risks and avoided them. Instead of rushing, he scaled the operation carefully. He stuck to the discipline systems that had already proven successful. He treated this massive discovery with the same focus and respect as any other mining cut. And there's something deeper here too. For Parker, this isn't just about gold, it's about legacy. His grandfather, John Schnabel, spent decades working the Klondike, building a reputation through hard work and dedication. Parker inherited that legacy at just 16, and every season since has been about living up to it. This season did exactly that. Not just because of the incredible numbers, but because of how those results were achieved, with patience, discipline, and a relentless focus on doing things the right way. The kind of approach that would make an old-school miner nod quietly and say, "That's how it's done." At just 29 years old, Parker still has a long future ahead of him in mining. And with this achievement, he's proven something important, not just to the Klondike, but to the entire industry. His best days aren't behind him. As it turns out, they were waiting underground. hidden deep within an ancient channel until someone skilled and patient enough came along to find them. And Parker Schnabel did exactly that. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Timefold channel for more incredible discoveries.